You are watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Joining us on the line, of course, is the tax partner of Deloitte Malaysia, Theresa Goh. Theresa, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. We are, of course, trying to unearth and unravel the business of Malaysia as well as the budget week that is happening towards the end of this week. Let's look at the overarching themes that will come out from this budget. What would be some of your expectations when it comes to the budget theme for this year?
Well, I think where the themes are concerned, two of those themes that they have announced have actually struck me, and I thought that, well, this is of grave importance, and of course, this is of relevance to the current situation. And as you know, the current situation, we are facing a negative GDP growth, and we've got the third wave of COVID-19 that we are currently fighting. So these two themes that I think are very relevant are actually caring for the people and steering the economy. Of course, it's a very difficult balance between these two, right? Protecting the lives of the people or protecting their livelihoods. So that's the biggest challenge for this budget. So the first theme, caring for the people, there are a number of areas that are announced, and one of them is actually on education. And as we know, we can no longer depend on the physical education, right? The pandemic has taught us that. 6.4 million students from preschool all the way to university, their education have been disrupted because of the MCO. So we have no choice but to move from physical education to digital education. So I think many measures are needed in order to make this happen. And another area that they're looking at is actually on unemployment. As we know, the estimated unemployment numbers are expected to rise to 2.4 million. So that's quite shocking. And in addition to that, there are 400,000 new graduates that will be graduating this year as well. So, so we're looking at what the government can do. So other than putting cash in their hands, the cash aid, which is not sustainable, what else can the government do? I think one of the good things that they have done is actually set up this platform called My Future Jobs. And it helps to match job vacancies with job seekers. And on this platform, 70,000 people have found employment. So this is quite encouraging. I think the next thing they need to look at is actually, to reskill and to retrain so that, those unemployed can get, some kind of jobs. And the other, of course, is to make sure that they are employable. So the new grads that will be coming out, we do not know what percentage of that are employable. So these are the things that need to be looked into. So in addition to these two, is social protection and social mobility. So we don't want the poor to become poorer. So we are worried social mobility, there's downward social mobility, even from M40, hopefully, down to lower middle income and to B40 and hopefully not B40 to the poverty level, to fall into poverty. So we need social protection for these people, right? And also for help. So a stronger safety net is required. Again, I think it's a question of can we do more than just giving cash handouts?
In previous interviews, the Finance Minister, Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul, did say that he is thinking about widening the SST or the sales tax and service tax. Do you think that that's an option that the government is going to pursue in this budget?
I don't think the government has many options to consider. Let me just give you the background, right? Our government revenue, our main source is actually our oil and gas revenue as well as tax collection. And tax collection forms about 64% of our total government revenue. It's a big chunk, right? And for this year, the direct tax budget was supposed to be 154 billion, but the IRB has actually reduced this down, revised the budget downwards to 100 billion. So that's by 1/3. So it's a big chunk, right? And where our oil and gas revenue is concerned, it depends very much on global trade volume. If the global trade volume can go up, then it will push back the Brent crude oil price. The last budget, the USD, we were looking at 62 USD per barrel, right? In 2019 when we were looking at the budget. And now it's hovering around, 37, 40. And we're hoping that, with the increase in global trade volumes, the oil price will go back up to at least 50 to 55, and then that will help us. Tax rates for individuals or even for corporations, because we want to be competitive where FDIs are concerned. So what options are left? So what I can think of with regard to indirect tax, is definitely widening the scope, like you mentioned just now, for sales and service tax. Um, Probably not now, but in the future, we probably may have to think about a GST comeback. When I look at the numbers, right, the tax collected under GST was about 43 billion, and under SST for 2019 is only 26 billion, 26.8 billion. So we need to widen the scope for SST, right, for this revenue from indirect tax to grow. And in the longer term policy, we probably need to consider the GST coming back. But we can, before re-implementation, all the things that we were not happy about GST needs to be considered and worked on before we can bring it back for re-implementation. And one is prompt GST refunds. GST payments are collected. Money has gone somewhere else. When it comes time for the refunds, it's all got stuck and people are not getting the refund, and they have to continue to pay the subsequent month's GST. And the other thing is stringent enforcement on anti-profiteering, so that we do see the benefits of GST, the lower costs and all that being passed on to consumers, and that businesses do not increase prices unnecessarily as well. So these are some of the things, right? And adequate preparation time to be given for people as well. But for today, what we can do now, in addition to widening the scope of SST, I think we can also try to broaden the tax base. And two easy ways, some with two ways that I can think of, one with a lot less resistance than the other. And this one that I'm thinking about is actually the very small businesses like hawkers and all that. So if we can have a simplified tax system for them, I think there would not be any resistance for them to comply and to pay their share of taxes. So what's hampering them is the compliance burden, right, of having to keep receipts and all that. So if the take profits as a certain percentage of their turnover, then it will be easy for them to comply. So that's the least resistant one. I think the other one would actually be the shadow economy. So that's a lot bigger than the small businesses. So if we can have greater enforcement there to tackle the shadow economy, that will help our coffers as well. And I think another area is actually to see how we can encourage voluntary compliance as well. You remember we had the SVDP program from November 18 to September 19, the Special Voluntary Disclosure Program, encouraging taxpayers to come forward to pay their taxes or additional taxes, and then with lower penalties and so on. Well, we collected about 7.88 billion, from that exercise. So I think we should give taxpayers another opportunity to come forward, right? There'll be more taxes to collect. So sometimes taxpayers may genuinely make errors, or sometimes they have different technical interpretation from the Inland Revenue. But if we provide this opportunity for them to come forward, I think they won't mind coming forward to pay the additional taxes, provided we can waive the penalty for this kind of cases, right? And one that is not so popular, but I thought may be fair, is actually having maybe a super profits tax, right? So we have those businesses, as you know what kind of businesses who have benefited greatly. They have been making super profits from the COVID-19 pandemic. So perhaps the government can have a super profits tax as well.
Exactly. You're talking about Hartalega, Supermax, Top Glove, those guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with the logic there. The argument is there. The argument is sound. When you talk about the compliance burden for the small folk, you're talking about the amnesty that should be rethought of and perhaps reintroduced again. These are, I guess, can-do kind of arguments. The problem here is with the two things that you mentioned just now. Number one, with the possible reintroduction of GST in the near future, and number two, taxing the shadow economy. There's an argument here that while it is sound, if you argue from the accounting argument, but it might be very difficult to do from the political will argument, in fact suicidal. Do you honestly think that this is a path that the government has to really think about pursuing, i.e. taxing the shadow economy and reintroduction of the GST? What is the political will argument here?
If you talk about taxing the shadow economy, I don't think there should be a problem when it comes to political will, right? It's more of the GST part, because GST was the one that sort of like I don't know, played a major role in the collapse of the previous government, right? But I think if we were to reintroduce this, if the rakyat can be educated and made aware of the necessity of this, the benefits of this, and if we can show that we can tackle the anti-profiteering right, so that people, if they see that prices go down, right, as a result of introduction of GST instead of going up, when have you seen prices go down? If prices start to go down, and if we can set it right in the sense that all the basic necessities and all that, which we did try to do during the last GST regime as well, right? So that the day-to-day basic necessities and everything are not subject to these taxes, so the prices don't increase necessarily. But I think when it comes to probably the when you go out for meals and everything, and then you see GST come into play and all that, then that's where they find that it's more expensive. But actually, if you look at it, if there is no sales and service tax, because sales and service tax is actually a multiple layer tax, right? Whereas GST is just a single layer. So technically, if you look at it, theoretically, like you said, it should be the goods price of goods should be a lot lower. Then the question is, why didn't it happen? Why didn't price of goods go down, right? So that's what the anti-profiteering team was for, right? To have that enforcement and make sure that prices do go down, whatever benefits and savings from the SST are actually passed on to consumers.
Back to what you just said earlier, right? We were talking about the first round of GST that we did. There's a lot of learnings there. We can actually improve on the learnings. For instance, these kind of instant cashback return from GST rebates, anti-profiteering, these kind of things can be applied again. But I'm very skeptical that at least this government can actually make it work this time round. Because of this, what is the reality of GST coming back in this parliamentary sitting, or at least in the near term, the next 1 or 2 years' time? Do you think that this is a possibility even?
It's definitely not this year, but in a few years, I think so. I think we just need to start working on it now, because this situation is unprecedented, right? And and the options available to us are not as many as what we had before, right? So we really do not have any choice, and we don't want to see our deficit increasing. We don't want to see our borrowings increase, right? Because it's nice to take on the borrowings, but then you have to service the debts as well, right? And so it's I know it's concerned that Parliament has passed a ceiling, right, for that GDP ratio to increase from 55 to 60%. But I hope we will not, use it, right? I mean, this is just to provide for it, just in case, right? Because we are expecting that we are not going to be able to make it, and we will need to, to rely on that. But I hope we don't really have to push, way past 55% even, right? But the thing is, I find that the normal rakyat, right, the everyday man in the street, if you ask them about our budget and their understanding of our budget, where government revenue comes from, where it goes to, etc., especially where it comes from, how many people actually really, read, about it and really have a good understanding? So this is where we need to make it as easy as possible, and then put it out there. People like you, the media and all that, right, should help to educate the public so that they are aware of this, and they can see also why this is more beneficial to us, right? And the government has to give a commitment as well, right, that this is going to happen, right? The negative effects of it, what they're going to do to remove this, what we can do, how we can improve on the last round, and things like that, right? So I believe if this can be done, and people can be educated on the benefits of GST, the resistance will be less, right? But we just need to see how to get this information out, right? It's just like COVID, right? Washing your hands and doing all this kind of stuff. Well, I think it's quite effective, right? The message has gone out even to grassroots, right? to all levels, even through our SMS and so on. That's a great way, I thought, right, to receive messages from the Ministry of Health every now and then, reminders and things like that, right? Perhaps we could do something similar, right, with regard to GST.
Perhaps that's a very interesting way of looking at it, simplifying the tax code, making things a little bit more repetitive for the everyday person to understand. We'll take a short break before we continue on our conversation with Theresa. Don't go anywhere.